Hello and welcome back to my channel Christian Faith and Fiction. My name's Lou and today I'm going to be sharing with you my January reading vlog. I've had a difficult month with my health, but I've still managed to read some books, so let's go and see how I got on. It is New Year's Day, first day of 2020, and the decorations are still up, but I have been in decluttering mode and getting rid of loads of stuff. I have to go with it when it comes because it doesn't last very long, once a year, maybe for a week. So going through lots of stuff, getting rid of stuff. This month I have chosen for my non-fiction book to read She Prays by Debbie Lindell. This is a 31-day journey to confident conversations with God. It's got journal entries for you to read every day, and then space and prayer prompts. And I'm journaling them in a separate notebook. But yeah, that one's the one this month. And the first book of 2020 that I'm reading, fiction-wise, is The Painted Castle by Kristy Cambron, which is the third book in the Lost Castle series. It is set in 3 different time periods, in the present day, and in 1944, I think, and in Victorian times, I'm not sure which time. So there follows 3 different women who are connected to the particular castle in the book. So the first book was set in France, second book was set in Ireland, and this one is in England. And they're a series, but they're also like companion novels. So they've been following 2 brothers and now the sister. But you do need to read them in order because the present day stories continue through. So there's kind of some spoilers between them. The first book I think I gave 4 out of 5 stars. And the second book 5 out of 5 stars. So I'm hoping this one will be as good as the second book. But we'll see. So it's January the 5th and I am on page 165 of The Painted Castle. I think I've probably got far enough into it now that I can explain a bit about what's happening in the setup and who the main characters are. I think I said this is a 3 stories taking place in different time periods in the same place, which is Framlington Castle, or near there. It's an estate near the castle. So in the present day story, we are following Kira Foley, who is the sister to Cormac and Quinn, who were the 2 brothers who've been in the previous 2 books. So this is like a companion novel. Kira Foley, who is an art historian, and she was working in New York, but something happened and her career went a bit wrong, and so she's ended up working as a waitress in their family pub in Dublin. And while she's there, this guy called Emery turns up, who has a bit of a reputation for possibly being an art thief, and he's trying to get her to come and work for him. And she doesn't trust him, and neither does her brother Cormac, but he manages to hook her with a kind of mystery intrigue and get her to come over to England to have a look at this painting. When she's there, she finds it's a painting of Queen Victoria, which she kind of has some kind of history with or some knowledge of, and so she's kind of hooked into it and she decides to stay. And their story is following her and the team that are doing the renovations or kind of excavations or whatever it is at the hall there that is being done up. Then in 1944 we have Amelia, I think it is, Mrs. Woods, who is a war widow who whose husband died a few years earlier, and she is living in his estate, which is that estate, and she's opened up her home to refugee children. So she's got them living there. And then at the beginning of her story, there's a regiment of American pilots who have kind of commandeered her house, and they're going to come and stay there. So she ends up with them kind of sleeping in the ground floor, and then the kids in above floor, and there's just loads of people around, and she still is trying to come to terms with her husband's death and the memories that are brought, that keep getting brought up there in that place. So that's following her, and there's also, the war, so there's bombings and different things happening. And then in the earliest story, which is the early 1800s, I think, is following Elizabeth, who, right in the beginning of the story, in the prologue, she's a child, and she's sat in a carriage waiting in London for her father to come out, and she sketches people, and she draws a picture of a interesting guy who's kind of looking in a shop window. He has a very distinctive pupil to his eye, and not long after that, her dad gets shot, and she goes out to see him. She believes that the person she sketched a picture of is the person who killed her father. So she wants revenge. So then her story starts properly when they're going to Framlington to a ball there where her mother needs her to get married to someone with a lot of money because their estate's falling apart because her father died, and so her mother's trying to marry her off, whereas she wants revenge. She's carrying like a pistol with her, and so that's where her story continues from there. So I will check back in when I have finished the book and let you know how it goes. There's a lot going on. I'm reading it quite slowly because it's quite dense in terms of plot. With all the 3 stories going on, it switches every chapter between a different story. So sometimes there's like massive cliffhangers, like something will get revealed at the end of one chapter and then it stops and you go to the next story. So it's really, really good. I think this is probably my favourite so far. Looks like it's going to be my favourite of the series. I feel like the series is getting better with each book. So we'll see. It's the 7th of January and this book arrived in the post today. It is On Wings of Devotion by Roseanna M. White, which is the second book in Codebreakers series. This one kind of matches the other one, Number of Love. I think they match quite well. I think I prefer the first one just because I really like her cardigan, basically. But they have kind of matching spines, which I really like as well. They've got a kind of Art Deco theme going on to it, so that's cool. I think this will be my next read. It is quite big again. I think it's like 380 pages. So there's that one. I think I said in my last vlog that I was going to try and do the Bible in a year, the paperback version, hoping that it would match up with the app that we are using for church, but they are using different systems. So the Bible in the year has an Old Testament reading, a New Testament one, and a Psalms and Proverbs, but the app just has like 3 chapters, or 3 or 4 chapters of one book. So it just has Genesis and then a Psalm. So I'm going to be out of sync if I don't kind of go with that one. So at the moment I'm doing both because I didn't want to stop doing the one I already started, but I think that's going to be a bit too hardcore to keep going with. So I'll see how I get on with that. Probably I'll have to give up the one that I just got, the paperback one. I thought I'd just show you the Read Scripture app that we're using at the moment at church. As you can see, it kind of opens up. You get you get a video in some of them that comes from the Bible Project, I think, and then you get several chapters of the book that we're reading, which is Genesis at the moment. And then at the end you get encouraged to move into a time of prayer and meditate on a psalm to finish with. So I'll leave a link in the description to that one. Hey, so it is the 10th of January today, and I have finished The Painted Castle, and I loved this book, absolutely loved it. It is my favourite of the series. I think Kristy Cambron has just got better and better at writing these kind of three-stranded narratives. She does really good job on all three of the romances, and I loved all three of the pairings of characters and how things kind of progressed and turned out. I think she does a really good job of mixing the three stories together in this one, so that you find out something in one story that has an impact on one of the other stories, and sometimes something gets revealed in one story that hasn't happened yet in another story, and you're like, oh no, what's going to happen for that story? So there's a lot of intrigue in there. There's a lot of secrets of people's past that they're trying to find out, as well as really great romance. So I'd be really surprised if this doesn't end up on my top 10 books of the year, because this was just really fantastic and a really good conclusion to the series. That was brilliant. And so next I am going to pick up the one that just came in the post on Wings of Devotion. So when I get a bit further into that, I'll let you know more about the characters and the setup for that one. It's January 11th, and I had some books in the post today. Finally, some of the pre-orders came in. So I have The Piper's Pursuit by Melanie Dickerson and The Dating Charade by Melissa Ferguson. I don't know why it is. If it's the publisher or something, these are both Thomas Nelson books. These both came a month after the US release date, but On Wings of Devotion came on the same day as the US release, and that's a Bethany House Publishing. So I don't know if it's a publisher, but some books come out a lot later in the UK. But I'm looking forward to reading those. I think that'll probably be on my January, if not February, TBRs. My voice is going slightly. I've just been practicing for leading worship tomorrow in our Exmouth campus, which is where we have above a pub upstairs, and it's kind of an acoustic set. There's maybe about 20 people. So I've been leading worship for quite a long number of years these days. I just do it about once a month now. But I'm praying that my voice will last out. Everyone seems to be, well, there's quite a few people going down with colds and coughs at the moment. It's kind of January time, so I'm really hoping that I'm not going to go down with anything nasty between now and then. Praying for that. Hi, so it's the 16th of January today. I did manage to do the worship on Sunday night, but then I've been kind of ill since. I haven't really been out of the house since Sunday night, and it's now Thursday, so I'm going a little bit crazy, but hopefully I'll get out tomorrow to my voluntary work there. I have finished this book though. Really good. Giving it 5 out of 5 stars. This follows Arabelle, who is a nurse. This is a World War I romance with a kind of a subplot of espionage and suspense. And the main character, Arabelle, who is a nurse, and she also has quite a lot of money, so she's kind of rich. At the beginning of the story, she is engaged to someone called Brax. It also follows the other character, Philip Camden, who was a fighter pilot, but he after the death of the rest of his squadron, he was court-martialed, and he thought he was going to be facing the firing squad, but he got taken into the Room 40 code breakers. At the beginning, his mother kind of comes to him and says, your sister has got herself pregnant by this guy and he won't marry her because he's already engaged to somebody else, and this somebody else already has money and is going to save his family home, so he won't break it off. And turns out that it's the fiance of Arabelle, and so right at the beginning when they meet, Philip has to try and convince Arabelle to break off the engagement with Brax so that he will then be free to marry Philip's sister. So that's basically how they meet and how the kind of their relationship goes on from there, which is kind of a troubling way to start, and it kind of develops throughout the book. And then, as I said, as a kind of subplot, there is this kind of spy story going on that's involving them and another person who you get to see through her perspective. So that kind of builds to a climax at the end as well. So it was really great. It was fairly fast paced compared to the last book that I read. I think because this is just one straight book, I was able to keep going through it quite quickly, and I enjoyed the characters in this one. Arabelle is kind of a funny mix of very generous, very wanting to follow God's principles, but also with a temper. So she's interesting in her mix, and then Philip is just feeling guilty all the time for what happened with his squadron, which you don't really find out until later on as to what really went on and what was going on in the background. So yeah, that was that one. It is the 17th of January and I have been out of the house. Yay! I've been into work, into the voluntary work that I do today, so that's been great. The day has been more sunny outside today, so that's also fantastic. I decided that the next book that I would pick up would be Of Fire and Lyons by Mesu Andrews. I saw her interview with Jenna. I'll put a link to it down below if you haven't seen it, and she talked there about the new book that she's got coming out, but then I made me think about this book that I already had, which I didn't manage to pick up last year, and I thought I would pick up now. So this is about, it's a biblical fiction book. It's set in the time of the exile, so it's following a kind of, I think it's a fictional character, Daniel's wife, so following from Daniel obviously in the lion's den. You can see the picture of a lion, and I think maybe it flashes back to some of the things that happened earlier in the story as well. So I'm looking forward to this. I've only read the first chapter so far, but it seems like it's going to be good. I haven't read any biblical fiction, or very much of it, for a while, just at the end of the Magi last month. So this will be an interesting story to get into. Hi, it's the 24th of January and I am currently about halfway through Of Fire and Lyons by Mesu Andrews. This book's fairly, I'm finding it quite intense. You might be familiar with the Daniel story from school or from kids' church, but this is definitely not the kids' version. It's pretty dramatic. It's quite harrowing at times, I guess. People going through an enormous amount of stuff, things happening. It sounds like it's quite a hard time to have lived through, but as it's quite so intense, I've decided to pick up another book at the same time, just so I can have something a bit lighter to read before going to bed, and that is The Dating Charade by Melissa Ferguson. Is it charade or charade? That's the question. I'm not sure. But this is a romantic comedy, contemporary romance, and follows two people, Cassie and Jet, I think. They meet each other after connecting on a dating app, and they get on really well. But after they go home, both of them end up with 3 children each. I think it's 3 children each. But because they don't want it to kind of jeopardise their dating, they decide to hide those kids from the other one. So they're both hiding the kids from each other. So I'm only a couple of chapters in, but it's already, fairly amusing. It's been really popular, I think, in America. It seems to have gone more mainstream. So I'll wait and see how much Christian content there is in it. Some Christian fiction books I find are on a kind of scale, particularly contemporary ones. Either they've got quite a lot of Christian content and you get to see the characters thinking through faith issues, praying and talking to God and that, or they're kind of on the opposite scale where maybe the story mentions that they've got a Bible by their bed but then nothing else. So I'll wait and see what kind of end of the scale this one's on. But that's what I'm reading at the moment. It's the 29th of January and I have been ill again. I've had sore throat come back again, so that's what I've been doing the last few days, resting again. I'm going to try and get through this quickly because my throat's hurting the more I'm talking. But I've finished Of Fire and Lyons by Mesu Andrews. It was really good, really dramatic, quite emotional at times. There was both, I enjoyed both the kind of political drama that was going on and with the stories that we kind of know from Daniel, as well as the family drama that is taking place alongside it, that is more of the fictional side that's been added in. It's good, really good. I gave it 4.75 out of 5, which I round up to 5 out of 5 on Goodreads. So I definitely think this is a good biblical fiction novel. And I am still reading The Dating Charade. I don't know if I'm going to finish it by the time I get to the end of the month, but I'm hoping to finish it by the time I wrap up for this month. So maybe if I can get on with it. It feels like it's going to be quite quick. It's quite entertaining so far. So hopefully I'll get through this one by the end. But I'll let you know at the end of the month in the wrap up. Just thought I'd show you this amazing sunset that we had on Thursday night. It really reminded me of the promises of God. On 31st of January, Britain officially left the EU. So we've got quite a lot of changes going on in the country right now. But I was really reminded of that phrase, that famous phrase, I don't know what the future holds, but I know who holds the future. And really holding on to the promises of God that He is in control, and whether people have been in favour of leaving or not, He is still in control. Okay, so that was my month in January. I didn't manage to finish The Dating Charade. I decided in the end that I prefer not to force myself to rush books, especially when I'm enjoying them. So that will be my priority for February, to get that one read. But I did finish 4 books. So I finished She Prays, which I found was a good, it was an encouraging devotional book. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the format. I enjoyed the reading style and the writing style. And I would read another book by Debbie Lindell. I felt like I didn't learn anything particularly new from it, but it did encourage me. So I would recommend that to anybody who wants to get into personal prayer, particularly if you come from a traditional background or from another religion where your kind of concept of prayer is rote, reciting different prayers that are written for you, and this one will give you more insight into personal prayer. And then, as you've seen, I read these 3 Christian fiction books, which were The Painted Castle, which I loved and gave 5 out of 5, Wings of Devotion, which I also loved and gave 5 out of 5, and Of Fire and Lyons, which I really enjoyed, and it was challenging, and it gave 4.75 out of 5. So it was a good reading month. I'm hoping for better health in February. I'm hoping to get some more books read in February, but I will see you again next month. Bye.